So in this video, we're going to be solving radical equations. So first example, take the fourth root of x squared plus 8x plus 7 minus 2 equal to 0. First thing I want to do is isolate the radical. To do that, I need to get rid of that negative 2. In order to do that, I add 2 to both sides. Once I add 2 to both sides, I have the fourth root of x squared plus 8x plus 7 equals 2. Now, in order to get rid of a fourth root, I can't just square it. I need to raise it to the fourth power, okay? And if you think about it for just a second in here, inside there's only one of those. And if you remember, I have the fourth root of something, then this, remember the rider goes in the house and the horsey goes outside, so that something gets raised to the 1/4, right? So in order to get rid of the 1/4, I need to raise that whole thing to the fourth power, and then a power to the power means I multiply those numbers together, and 1/4 of 4 is 1. So that's why raising this to the fourth power here turns this into x squared plus 8x plus 7 equal to, and then I raise the other side to the fourth power, 2 to the fourth, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Now in order to solve this equation, I need to move the 16 to the other side. So I have x squared plus 8x, and then minus 9 equals 0. And I always try to factor first. If you want to go straight to the quadratic formula or complete the square, be my guest. Factoring to me is like the quickest way to do it. So factor trinomial t-chart. So I want to multiply to -9 and add to 8, okay? So factors multiply to -9, add to 8. So -9, so that's 1 times 9. If I make 1 negative, 1 plus a negative, or 9 plus a -1 is 8, and that's what I want, okay? So this becomes 9x and then minus x, right? And then I have x squared and minus 9 brought down here, okay? So factor by grouping. So I grouped the first two, grouped the second two, make sure there's a plus in the middle. What's in common between those two and x? So I'm going to pull the x out, and what do I have? I have x plus 9. And then over here, I have a minus x minus 9. So to make that an x plus 9, I'm going to pull a -1 out, and then makes it x plus 9 right there. Okay, if I divide through by -1, that's how I get it. So what does that leave me? That leaves me an x plus 9 times, x and then a -1, all equal to 0. Zero factor property, set each piece equal to 0. X minus 1 equal to 0 here. Solve for x, I get x equals -9 or x equals 1. Now, am I done right here? Not quite. I need to check, okay? So I need to check. So this one's going to be fun to check. All right, so let's bring down the original equation to plug in. I'm going to plug a 1 in first because that's easier. Fourth root of 1 squared plus 8 times 1 plus 7 minus 2 equal to 0. 1 squared is 1 plus 8 plus 7, that's 16. Fourth root of 16. Okay, fourth root of 16 is the same as 16 to the 1/4 power. So if I go to my calculator and I do 16 raised to the 1/4 power, I get 2. So that's 2 minus 2 equals 0. I think that's true. So we got a winner there. Now what about this one? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, right? Let's plug it in. Fourth root, -9 squared plus 8 times -9 plus 7 minus 2 equal to 0. -9 squared is 81, and then minus 72 plus 7. Type that in your calculator. 81 minus 72 plus 7, that's 16. Fourth root of 16, once again, is 2. So 2 minus 2 equals 0. So guess what, guys? Both of those work. So it is possible for both of them to work. All right? So both solutions are good solutions for us, but you got to check. You got to check to make sure they're good. All right. If you don't check, you might be getting extraneous solutions. And just to hammer down extraneous solutions, say x equals negative 3. Why am I getting an extraneous solution? When I square, I'm introducing another x into the equation, an x times an x, right? I'm introducing another x into the equation. Now it says x squared equals 9. Well, guess what? Square root property says x equals plus or minus 3. But what did we know? We know we started with x only equaling negative 3. So the positive 3 is extraneous, whereas the negative 3 answer is the solution, okay? So that's just an easy way to see what I'm talking about. All right, so let's work through another problem. So we got the cube root of 7 minus 5x minus the cube root of 2x plus 3 equals 0, okay? How do I solve? Well, number one, get the radical by itself. Isolate the radical. Well, we have two radicals, so just pick one. Get it by itself. So add this radical to both sides. Okay, so add this to both sides. So if we do that, what do we get? We get the cube root of 7 minus 5x equals the cube root of 2x plus 3. Now, how do I get rid of a cube root? I'm going to cube it. I'm going to cube both sides. And so that gives me 7 minus 5x equals 2x plus 3. So I have x's on both sides. I'm going to move my x's around. So plus 5x plus 5x. So I have 7 equals 7x plus 3. I'm trying to get x by itself. How do I do that? I subtract 3 from both sides. So I get 4 equals 7x. And then to get x by itself, the inverse of multiplication is division. So my answer is 4/7. Okay? If I type that into my original equation, so the cube root of 7 minus 5 times 4/7 minus the cube root of 2 times 4/7 plus 3, is that equal to 0? That's the question, right? Well, goodness, what is that going to be? We've got 7 minus 20 over 7 in there. And then I've got, what is that? That's 8 over 7 plus 3. Goodness gracious. So hopefully those are the same number. So 7 minus 20 over 7. 7 minus 20 over 7 is 4.1428, blah, blah, blah. And then 8 over 7 plus 3. 8 over 7 plus 3. Hey, those look like the same number, don't they? So if they're the same number, and I take the cube root of that same number, then that's going to be 0. So guess what, guys? That does work. So x equals 4 over 7 is a solution, so you can box it up because it's an answer. Okay? Let's try another one. So let's do y to the 2/3 minus 9 over 25 equals 0. Okay? How am I going to do this? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to isolate the radical. Well, I don't see a radical. Do you? Yeah, there is actually a radical right here. Right now, it's in rational exponent form, so let's put it in a radical form. So remember, the rider goes in the house, the rider's on top, and the horsey goes outside. The horsey's outside the barn, okay? So cube root of y squared minus 9 over 25 equals 0. So to get the radical by itself, I'm going to add the 29 over 25 to both sides. And so when I do that, I get the cube root of y squared equals 9 over 25. To get rid of the cube root, I'm going to cube both sides. I'm going to cube both sides, so that gets me y squared equals 9 cubed over 25 cubed. Now you might be asking, Mr. Clark, why aren't you just multiplying this out? There is a method for why I'm doing this. You'll see in just a second. All right, now to get rid of the square, I take the square root. But when I take the square root, I have a plus and I have a minus. Don't forget your plus minus. That's the most common thing people forget is the plus minus when they take the square root. So what do we have? Y equals plus minus the square root. Well, I have 9 times 9 times 9 over 25 times 25 times 25. Okay? So if I'm taking a square root, I need 2 to get out of the house. So one group of 9s can come out. Okay? And one group of 25s can come out. But 1 9 stays in the house and 1 25 stays in the house. Okay? So what is the square root of 9 though? The square root of 9 is 3. And what is the square root of 25? The square root of 25 is 5. So now I can multiply. So that's plus minus, that's 27 over 125. So y is equal to plus minus 27 over 125. Now to check this, you can plug this back into your equation. Okay. So if I plug back in, so I have cube root of, what was the original equation? Cube root of y squared. Well, if y squared, that's 27 over 125 squared. And then minus 9 over 25 equal to 0. Well, guess what? When I square this, let's just rewrite this as 27 over 125 raised to the rider in the house. Rider goes on top, horsey outside, horsey goes underneath. Let's type that on our calculator, see what we get. Parentheses, 27 divided by 125, close parentheses. Raise it to the 2 divided by 3. Enter, I get 0.36. Now if I do math frac, I get 9 over 25. So that tells me, so 9 over 25 minus 9 over 25, does that equal 0? I think so. So that one works. Now the question is, does it work for the negative? If I do the negative of it, does it work? Okay? Because we got the plus, now let's see if the minus one works. So if I do the minus 1, so I do negative 27 over 125, raise it to the 2 divided by 3. Oh, not a real, oh my goodness gracious. So our calculator is a little too smart for its own good, okay? Here's the deal, guys. When I square this, the negative becomes positive. Okay, the negative becomes positive. So now we end up with the same thing as we had inside there. So it turns out that both of those actually do work. So y is equal to the plus and the minus 27 over 125. Okay? All right, cool. Let's do one. Let's do a formula. You know what? We'll do the formulas in another video.